Ron DeSantis in Florida, he sent teachers to a civics class, and they were teaching that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were anti-slavery.
Ron DeSantis has the idea. Let's put it that way.
But they did own slaves.
Well,
I'm sorry.
They did own slaves, but they knew that
honestly, things were different back then.
But do you think that it should be taught that they didn't support slavery?
Correct. And that's what the
You're saying they did not support slavery.
They did not. That's why
I don't know.
But they owned slaves.
They owned slaves.
Hello, everybody. David Schuster here. Seeing a clip like that can make you wonder how Democrats keep losing to a party that embraces endless MAGA absurdities. However, the reason Democrats have lost to the last three presidential elections might be hiding in plain sight. And now that the dust is settled on the 2024 outcomes, some down-ballot Democrats who managed to secure victories are beginning to speak out directly or indirectly about what they believe ultimately led to Kamala Harris's campaign failure. Senator-elect Ruben Gallego recently joined Jake Tapper on CNN to discuss the key strategies his campaign embraced to cross the finish line and win in Arizona.
You won in Arizona. The top of the ticket did not. What did you do right and they did wrong?
Well, look, from the get-go, we understood that we were already behind the eight ball. There are 300,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. We needed to just talk to everybody as often as possible and build trust because we knew it was a very hard environment. People were hurting. When I say people were hurting, people really felt the pain of the economy, of not being able to buy what they wanted, not being able to buy a house, even get apartments. And what we needed to do is make sure people understood that I felt what they had felt because I grew up poor. I understood what they were feeling. So we went everywhere in Arizona. We spoke to everybody, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. We went to the reddest parts of the state. We went to some of the bluest parts of the state that also never get visited. And we explained to people that, what is happening right now is bad. And also, by the way, it's not your fault. But we're going to work to fix it.
Did you notice how Gallego prioritized directly engaging with voters, demonstrated that he understood their challenges, and made a commitment to fight for them? That's exactly what a winning political campaign message looks like, building trust, connecting with voters where they are, and speaking to the issues that matter most to them. Now, consider this contrast. Kamala Harris chose to emphasize bipartisan unity by campaigning alongside former Republican Representative Liz Cheney. In hindsight, the strategy backfired because it cast Harris as the status quo candidate tied to Washington's political establishment. Her campaign underestimated how deeply the public despises establishment politics and the status quo, regardless of party affiliation. Now, I get the Harris effort to remind Republicans that many high-profile Republicans were against Trump, but keep in mind that Liz Cheney's father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, once had an approval rating drop to just 13% while he was in office. And the Harris campaign alignment with the Cheneys in an effort to undercut Trump with Republicans still caused a lot of baggage. And the baggage became heavier as the Harris campaign missed opportunities to create a movement or cause that was new. In other words, by dedicating valuable campaign time and resources to appear with Cheney, there was less time and fewer resources to highlight Harris's outreach to unions and Harris's efforts to bring meaningful change to the lives of working class voters. The effort to stand with Republicans dampened potential enthusiasm on the left. And the misstep was, by most accounts, a significant factor in the Harris loss and helped solidify Donald Trump's victory. Now, back to Senator-elect Gallego. In his interview on CNN, Gallego talked about the importance of speaking directly, simply, and clearly to voters without getting bogged down in defending or explaining the Biden administration's records.
I've heard Democrats complaining, and this is not Kamala Harris specific, but I've heard Democrats complaining that too often Democrats think that they can say, oh, don't worry about your pain, look at this chart.
Yes, that's true.
And do you think that was something that...
Absolutely. A lot of people were saying that, and I heard that, we'll talk to them about how good the economy is. The problem is, you can have all the graphs you want. If you open up your checking account and you see that you're making less and there's not enough coming in, it doesn't matter what the GDP growth is, right? If you go to the grocery store, and I live in a fairly working class area, and you start noticing that the brand names are not being bought and generics are, it doesn't matter what unemployment is. A lot of people got through this inflation, rise in inflation, by also taking out credit card debt. And this is, I think, what people forgot the whole time, is that even though, yes, wages were getting higher, yes, costs were going down, people were still paying down credit card debt that they used basically to survive this whole time. And so one of the things that we were very clear about in this campaign is we said, yes, let's see what we can do. Like, let's figure out what we can do to make your life a little easier, so you can breathe easier, right? And just being able to recognize that, hey, this is a problem, and not just trying to gloss over it, I think was a big, big difference.
Talking about life being easier, about breathing easier, boiling things down. That approach is something Donald Trump does well. He speaks directly to his audience in plain, simple terms while also tapping into voters' anger and frustration with the political establishment. By addressing voter concerns head-on and framing himself as a populist outsider, as absurd as that may sound, Donald Trump effectively connected with voters who felt ignored or disillusioned by traditional politicians. This direct, relatable style isn't just a winning formula for Republicans like Donald Trump, it has proven effective for Democrats as well. In the 2024 election, many voters in New York's 14th congressional district demonstrated this by splitting their ticket, voting for both Donald Trump and Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. This underscores that voters are willing to support candidates from opposing parties if the voters feel those candidates genuinely understand and address their concerns. It highlights the power of authentic, direct messaging and a willingness to challenge the political establishment regardless of party affiliation.
Of all the confounding results in this past election, perhaps the strangest phenomenon was the surprising number of people who voted for Democrats down ballot and then checked off Donald Trump for president. That was the case in New York's 14th district. A number of voters cast their ballot for both Trump and one of the House's most progressive Democrats, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, better known as AOC. And while the Democratic Party is still reeling from the results, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is doing something a lot of the D.C. folks aren't doing, which is talking to social media and actually talking to voters to figure out why this happened.
If you voted for Donald Trump and me, or if you voted for Donald Trump and voted Democratic down ballot, I would really love to hear from you. This is not a place of judgment. I'm not gonna put your stuff on blast or anything like that or dunk on it. That's genuinely not the intent here. I actually want to learn from you. I want to hear what you were thinking, and I just want to hear from you. But when it comes to people who split their ticket, I think a lot of people cited several different things. One is there is universal frustration in this country, much of it I actually think justified, that is raging at a political establishment that centers corporate interests, billionaires, and puts their needs ahead of the needs of working Americans.
A political establishment that puts billionaires and corporations ahead of working class Americans. And that's a view led by Senator Bernie Sanders on the left and sadly by Donald Trump on the right, as crazy as that sounds. So in this case, in AOC's district where she amplified the populist message, a lot of voters split their tickets supporting AOC for Congress and Donald Trump for president. And that highlights just how crucial the populist anti-establishment message has become. Voters are increasingly drawn to candidates and campaigns that challenge the status quo. And by the way, if you need an example of an establishment insider who appears out of touch with voters and can't even directly answer a simple question, look no further than Democrat House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on CBS News.
Do you believe that Vice President Harris should have created more of a distinction between what she was going to do up against what the Biden administration is doing?
Well, we'll have an opportunity to engage in after-action analysis, and I expect that will happen not just over the next few days, but over the next few weeks and the next few months. It will be required. From our perspective as House Democrats, I think we're going to have a family conversation that needs to be clear-eyed, candid, and comprehensive to figure out what happened on election night, why did it happen, and how do we improve upon the performance in order to put us in the strongest possible position to deliver for the American people moving forward.
Translation, yes, we will try to find out why we lost. But the verbal mumbo-jumbo to say that took so much time that by the time Jeffries was done, you'd almost forgotten the question. Democrats would be better served to try and answer the question like a normal person, because normalcy and straight talk, that's what people are seeking these days in their political leaders. Say something like, Obviously, we Democrats failed. Voters did not like what we were saying or pledging, so yes, we need to reevaluate. Jeffries and others need to get back to talking like a regular person, not talking like an establishment politician. And that effort would be easier, in my view, if Democrats stood for something bigger than being against Donald Trump or being against Republicans, as big as that is. If you look at several issues that progressives have championed, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage, making college more affordable, closing the wealth gap, polls show a clear majority of Americans support the progressive position. On Medicare for all, for example, even a majority of Republicans support such an expansion of health care. But Republican and Democratic political leaders alike are beholden to healthcare corporations and pharmaceutical companies, so the Democratic position comes out as making minor healthcare and insurance changes at the margins, not doing something big. And Democrats, therefore, with that small-minded approach instead of something big, lose the chance to inspire voters over healthcare and create a movement that would bring energy and enthusiasm to an election. And by the way, Medicare for all is clearly an anti-establishment position. Talk about upsetting the apple cart. And the goal, of course, is to lower healthcare costs, expand coverage, and make life easier for all Americans. It is populist and it is different. And those are the themes that are resonating with American voters. Sadly, only the Republican Party seems to be offering a populist anti-establishment message right now. And for the GOP, it's part of an effort through more tax cuts for the rich and deporting immigrants that will further divide us. Democrats should stand for bringing Americans together and uniting us. But the Democratic Party should also aim to do big, inspiring things that will help the working class. Continuing the status quo of the Biden administration was not enough. Stability lost to instability. The establishment lost to shaking things up. Everything is fine lost to I hear your pain. Democrats, take note. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for joining us.